Hello, my name is Emmanuel. I am a teacher, an inclusion specialist, a consultant, and this is my journey into education. School days. Where do I start? From the very beginning. School was tricky. School was very hard. So I grew up in an area in South London called Bermondsey. Bermondsey was known to be a very racist area, and I went to a Roman Catholic school. So from the age of 3 to about 10, I attended this school that, quite frankly, didn't suit me. I don't know how else to say. I really struggled there. I had incidents with children where I wasn't protected by the school itself, and I grew up kind of understanding that my parents also were having a tricky experience at the school, just because you overhear things that your parents are saying. And when I got to year 5, a particular incident happened where I had a disagreement with the teacher, and she sent me out of the classroom. And when she sent me out of the classroom, she then decided, actually, you need to go to the head teacher's office. So I went to the head teacher's office. There was another child sitting there. I spoke to this child. I was like, why are you here? He said he did this. Somebody sent him to the head teacher's office. And I just went on this rant, I'll be honest, and I said to the child, hey, like, you know what, it's not you, it's the school. The school's racist, the teachers are racist, the head teacher's racist. And as I said that, the head teacher walks into the office at the same time. And let's just say that was the last day that I had at the school. So that was the first time I experienced any type of exclusion. I was suspended. And then my parents then made a decision to move from Southeast London to East London. I attended a school called Vicarage Primary School in East Ham, and I spent my first successful year in that school. Things were so bad in my previous school that, you know, I was often referred to as Sean. When they asked me at the admissions in my new school, what do you want to be referred to as? I said Emmanuel. I just wanted a whole different change, a new identity. And so that first year of school for me at Vicarage Primary School was the best year of school that I've had. And then, you know, there was a constant theme. I went to secondary school and it was more of the same in terms of I had lots of potential, but I just really struggled academically. So that was school for me. I wasn't a particularly academic child, I wouldn't say. I went through 2 school exclusions, and ultimately I failed school. I left with only 4 A to C GCSEs. So by my parents' admission, by normal standards, I wouldn't say I had a very good school experience. What was the moment that made me think about becoming a teacher? I'll be honest, it wasn't there from the beginning. In terms of when I left school, when I went to college, when I went to university, there was no thought in my mind that I would ever be the teacher that I am today. The first and most important moment, I think, for me was when I became a learning support assistant. I was a football coach. Then I became a learning support assistant. I asked the head teacher, is it possible for me to just get some work experience at your school? She said, yes, you can. She gave me an opportunity to work for 2 weeks paid, and then the 2 weeks turned into 5 months. And during that time, I started supporting a young boy who he had ADHD, behavioral problems. And I was told, don't expect too much from this child. When he goes into the classroom, if he kicks off, everybody else leaves. He needs that space to be able to do whatever he's about to do in the classroom. So I went into that situation thinking, you know what, challenge accepted. I'll support him. And I supported that boy for between 18 months to like 20 months in total. And he left school with results in his English, in his math, his SATs, 6 SATs tests were incredibly impressive. And I think that was the first time I realized, oh, I'm supposed to be in education. But at the end of that time, when I started to cover lessons and I started to teach lessons, I had enough people around me that encouraged me and said, Manny, you are a teacher, like you have the gift of teaching. I was raw, but they said, you can definitely do this. So I reluctantly, in 2014, enrolled to be a teacher. I did my qualifications, and the rest is history. How does my personal journey impact the way I interact with my students? Good question. I think for me, being authentic and being myself is the most important thing. I don't try to hide who I am. Currently, I'm in Dubai, I'm in the Middle East, I'm in an international school. I work with children that come from affluent backgrounds, children that come from all different countries around the world. And I think the most important thing for them to see is me, who I am. I am a young black man, I'm a father, I'm a husband. I come from East London, I have a bit of a twang to my accent. I think the raw, authentic version of Mr. Manny, which is what my students call me, that for me has a massive impact, because what I'm essentially showing them and teaching them is that it doesn't really matter what you look like. You know, I'm as educated as any other person that you see in this building. You know, I have qualifications just as much, maybe even more so, than some of these adults that you see in the school. So I think I do take pride, and I'm very conscious that I am breaking barriers in people's minds all the time when they see me. And I want it to be normalized. It's not meant to be a special occasion for me to walk into your classroom. It is normal to see a young black educated man in the classroom. So I think it has a massive impact, because in a world where people judge others based on the color of their skin, I think it's important for you to see me as who I am, but also recognize that I can be as good as anybody else at this job of teaching. And so I hope that leaves a good impact on my students. What gaps do I see in education? Where do I start? I think the first one is, I think there's far too much focus on technology at the moment. Maybe not in every school, maybe not in every country or context, but I think if you walk into a classroom, for instance, and you see every child on a laptop, and they're spending most of their time on an iPad or a laptop throughout the course of the day, the number one question I have to ask is, well, where are the opportunities for them to write, for them to be able to develop their fine gross motor skills? Where are the opportunities for them to talk and to converse and develop their oral skills? So it's a weird one, because it's not quite a gap. It's almost like we've tried to fill the gap of technology, and we've overdosed on it. So that would be the first one, to strip back the intense nature of technology in our schools at the moment. The other one, in no particular order, is I think teachers aren't equipped or trained well enough in matters to do with special educational needs. We talk about schools being inclusive and teachers being inclusive, but yet we don't dedicate as much time in our teachers training to teaching teachers how to support children and families in these circumstances. So that for me is really important, and I think we need to kind of go back and fill that gap urgently for the sake of our children and our families. And then I would also say that there's a massive gap in just the way that we retain and protect our teachers. In the UK in particular, it's very difficult to find a teacher for certain subjects, because teachers are either leaving the profession very quickly, or they're going abroad to find more competitive packages, right? And I think retention for teachers as a whole is just a big problem, because I think as a profession, it isn't given the same level of respect that you might see as a lawyer, as a doctor, and that's reflected in the pay, in the discourse around teachers. I remember during COVID, the rhetoric that certain commentators were sharing about teachers, it was quite damaging, talking about teachers being lazy, not wanting to go into work. But hey, there's a pandemic going on. Every other profession has been told that they should work from home, but yet actually you wanted the doors of schools to be open just so that teachers could go in and prove their worth. And I thought that was quite telling. So yeah, for me, those things would be the gaps, I would say, that we should address pretty soon. What advice would I give to teachers who have students that were like myself? Good one. For me, the important thing for every teacher is to recognize that when you walk into a classroom, every child has their own interests, their own personality, their own character. They're on their own journey. So you should see them as different for sure, which is where the equality part comes into it. But then I think it's really important to differentiate equality and equity. And equity is understanding that although you will have access to a seat in this classroom, you will come from different backgrounds, different starting points. And the reason why that's important is because the family dynamics, children's socio-economic status, these things do have an impact on the child's ability to engage, to be able to have access to resources, etc., etc. So to answer the question, if somebody was teaching a child like myself, or a child who was like me when I was younger, I would say think outside of the box as a teacher, because very few teachers did that for me. They just saw me as a number. But I had one teacher in particular, Miss Spong. I always talk about Miss Spong on every video I do. Miss Spong was my English teacher, and she saw me, Emmanuel, as an individual with his own skills, with his own talents. She didn't worry about the trouble I got into at break time. She wasn't focused on the things I couldn't do. She tried to focus on my strengths and my skills. And because of her, in her English lessons, I developed a love for reading, for writing, for creative arts, for language and oracy. And those skills I've used up until now, up until today, because she saw me as an individual with his own needs, with his own talents, with his own gifts. And she had to teach me in a way that was different from other children. Not completely different, but she had to tailor what she was doing. That is what differentiation is. So the simplest answer I can give is recognize that every child has their own, I've said this like 3 times, their own interests, their own character, their own personality. Try your best to tap into that person, that individual, which is key, because what you deposit into them could be the difference between their journey and how successful they are.